Good morning. Happy Monday. My name is Sarang. I'm the chief of staff at Mira, for those of you who might not know me. I do just going to give some federal updates. Last time I did this was 2 weeks ago, so I'll mostly focus just on things that have happened since then, since the last time we did this. And hopefully you found out when you joined the Zoom that this is being recorded. We will be recording these, hopefully, if I remember, from now on and make those recordings available to, certainly we'll send them out to the folks who join this, but also make them available to members at some point. And the slides we'll also put on the website for everyone to access. I'm going to start like I did last time, actually, with some of the things that are happening out of Congress, if this is actually going to go forward. There we go. Start with some of the things that are happening in Congress. Not a whole lot of action there, but there are a few important things to know about. First off, last time we did talk about the Laken Riley Act. This had already passed Congress the last time we spoke, but I'm including it just because it was actually signed into law now. This was the first bill that Trump signed in his second administration. And just as a reminder of what this bill does, it expands the basis for detaining undocumented immigrants, even when they're for criminal matters, even when there's just an accusation, no conviction required, just charges, and it can be for some minor things, for example, shoplifting. This bill also gives states broader authority, broader abilities to sue the federal government, both for policies they don't like. Um, Example, we saw lawsuits over DACA, um, but also over individual enforcement actions. So, for example, someone is released from detention and then is subsequently detained. This bill would give those states authority to sue over that. Or it does give, now states have that authority. This is signed into law. This is US law now. There's also the anti-sanctuary bill that's come out. I didn't have a whole lot of details on this last time because the language wasn't available. It is out now. It's a very short bill. What it does is define sanctuary jurisdictions as any jurisdictions where they prohibit or restrict information sharing with federal officials regarding an individual's immigration status, or jurisdictions where they do not comply with detainers or requests to notify. There's a small exception in the bill when the individual is perhaps the victims of crime. But other than that, um, basically any of these Trust Act policies we have would count, would make us a sanctuary jurisdiction according to this bill. And what the bill would do is restrict any funding that goes to those jurisdictions if that funding might be used for the benefit of undocumented immigrants. We can imagine a whole lot of things being included in that. Uh, the There was expected to be a vote on the bill already, but they've pushed it back a couple of weeks. So we are expecting the vote to be held the week of the 24th. There's also it's actually called the Preventing Violence Against Women by Immigrant Aliens Act. This one has already been passed. It actually passed the last time we talked. And it's just sitting in the Senate Judiciary Committee right now. So we'll wait and see how that's going to come along. We have no timeline for when this might move forward at this point. We're still waiting for further information on this one. The last thing that's in Congress, and this is going to be a big one. I did talk about this last time, and it's kind of not gone anywhere since, but I do want to just remind people of this one, which is reconciliation. And reconciliation, for those who aren't familiar, is a process by which Congress can pass bills related to taxing powers and spending without having to worry about a filibuster in the Senate, so they can move stuff forward just with a simple majority instead of the 60 votes that would normally be needed to get over a filibuster. And ever since Trump won the election back in November, Congress has been, or I should say GOP leadership in Congress has been very focused on reconciliation in order to move forward huge chunks of the agenda. Major things like extending the 2017 tax cuts, a lot of the funding issues that they're arguing about now, that they're restricting about now, they want to cut that through reconciliation. A lot of energy policy to boost hydrocarbons and cut all the stuff for solar, winds, and other green forms of energy. Increasing the debt ceiling. But the big one for us is going to be the border provisions. And so they're looking at spending a lot of money to beef up customs and border protection, to increase detention, and to build the wall along the southern border. Now, there's two ways they could go about this. The House wants to move all of this as a single package. The Senate actually would like to split this in two. And what the Senate wants to do really is move the border provisions, so CBP, detention, border wall, separately, and that would move quicker if they were to do these as separate things. Again, the House wants to do only one bill, but they can't even agree on the spending cuts that they want to put into this. So there was a big meeting last week of the GOP. It ended without any kind of agreement. They're still focused on moving this all as one bill, though. If it moves as one bill, we probably won't see any real action on this for a couple of months still. We'd be looking at probably February, or excuse me, it is February. We're looking at probably April until we have any actual language. If they go with a Senate pathway and do this as two things, most of that stuff we still wouldn't see till April, but the immigration pieces could come down a lot sooner than that. Again, this is just a matter of we're kind of in a wait and see pattern to see what GOP leadership decides to do on this. Again, there's debate within the House on how they want to do this, and debate between the House and Senate on how they want to do this. So we don't really have any clarity right now on where this is going to go or how this is going to move forward. That's actually it for the congressional pieces. Before I move on to what the horrors that this administration has been visiting on our communities, are there any questions about this congressional issues first? You can just feel free to unmute yourself. I cannot see the chat, by the way, right now, so. No questions? Okay. We will move on to some of the nightmare that we're seeing with the administration. So the first thing is, we talked about this briefly last time, but they have expanded the use of expedited removal. Traditionally, the administration, the executive branch has only used expedited removal within 100 miles of the border. This includes sea borders, so all along the eastern and western coast, and also against people who've only been here within 2 weeks. Now they've expanded its use to anyone who's been here for less than 2 years and is caught at anywhere around the border. Important things that folks should know about this: if people have been here for more than 2 years and they're undocumented, it's a good idea to carry around a copy of something showing proof of residence. School records, medical records, whatever. bills, anything you can think of. I always recommend it should be photocopies. Keep originals safe at home. Um, if you similarly, if you have been here less than 2 years, but you have some application in with USCIS or court date already, make sure you're carrying around copies of those documents as well, just to show that you're already in the system, you're already going through it. We haven't heard any stories of this being used just yet, but I'm sure those will come down the pipeline. Birthright citizenship, there's been a lot of activity on this. Uh, Quick reminder, what Trump is trying to do is, well, ignore the Constitution first off. But what they're trying to do is say that you are not a native-born US citizen unless your mother has some kind of permanent status and your father is either a US citizen or a green card holder. Um, Expectations were always that this would not stand up to judicial scrutiny, and that seems to be the case so far. We know of five lawsuits filed against this, two that were brought by states, one here in Massachusetts, one in Washington, and three others brought by nonprofits, including Brazilian Worker Center, who's on the call with us. Thank you all. Um, Other nonprofits have brought suit in Maryland and in New Hampshire as well. I should just move on to this slide, sorry. And what we've gotten so far is that we've seen two preliminary injunctions filed. So right now, this move by the administration is blocked. The two cases here in Massachusetts, one brought by states, one brought by nonprofits, had their hearing just this past Friday. Their first hearing was past Friday. So we would expect a ruling on that sometime soon. I don't know if Brazilian Worker Center might have any details, or if they have any heard anything from a little more specific about when that ruling might come out. If you did, I'd love to hear that. New Hampshire had their case actually this morning as well. So we could see a ruling coming out of New Hampshire some point soon. Thank you, Lenita. I can't see the chat now, and Lenita's saying they haven't heard anything yet. So we'll keep you updated on that. As soon as we hear anything, we will let folks know. Important thing right now is that the Constitution remains intact for the moment. Anyone born in the US, there's some exceptions around that jurisdiction issue, but generally speaking, anyone born in the US will be a native-born US citizen for now. Oops, sorry. Next thing is TPS for Venezuela. This has been a real horror show. Trying to think of how to explain this. So for Venezuelans, TPS, they did something kind of weird, which is that there's two different categories, two different classes, sort of, two different groups of people with on two different timelines. And so what happened is that the administration very quickly reversed a Biden decision to extend TPS for Venezuela. And then a couple of days, or the following week, they basically said we're going to actually rescind TPS for one of those categories of people who had it for Venezuela. So those were the people who were designated in 2 years ago in 2023, and their protection was originally running through early April of this year. It's now, they are going to expire on April 7th. There's another category of Venezuelans who also have TPS. They are under the 2021 designation for temporary protected status. And right now, that runs through September. Um, I would be incredibly surprised if they were to extend that, but we will know this summer um, for certain what they're going to do, what they're not going to do. But right now, for people who had TPS status that expires in April of this year, that's going to be the case for them. It's going to expire on April 7th. Anyone who has TPS under this category, the only thing we can really recommend is to speak to an attorney and see if there are any forms of relief available to them. And if there is, to file as quickly as possible. Um, Again, with our concerns around expedited removal, anyone who's going to lose TPS could be subject to that, and could be very quickly removed. So again, get an application in, keep a copy of that application paperwork with you so that if you run into ICE, you can show them that you have something pending. Similarly, we are expecting the cancellation of parole for CHNV. This is Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. This was a special process that was started by the Biden administration. Um, this was one of the first executive orders that was signed on Inauguration Day, was to end not just this, but all categorical forms of temporary protected status. That includes Uniting for Ukraine, and the Allies parole program that was for Afghans that supported the US. Um, we don't have anything official yet, but there have been drafts of this, it looks like, circulating in the administration. We've seen news reports that this will come out soon. Um, but again, we don't have any timing on this. Similar to the TPS, folks who have parole under one of these categories, one of these categorical approaches, the best thing is for them to consult an attorney and see what other options might be available for them if there is anything they can do. I would also just point out that the Justice Action Center is looking for plaintiffs to sue for any of these categorical programs. CHNV, the Uniting for Ukraine, the Allies one that I mentioned before. I have contact information here for Tasha Morrow at the Justice Action Center. If you have any members of your community who might be interested in joining as a plaintiff, I encourage you to reach out to Tasha. Oops. Another thing, this is going to be a real nightmare that's coming up. And some of you are already impacted by this. Some of you will see the impacts coming down the road. But they're basically trying to freeze as much federal spending as possible, and that's particularly money that's going out through grants or other ways. Um, they had tried to do this through a memo out of the Office of Management and Budget, OMB. A court froze that, and OMB almost immediately rescinded that memo. But what they're doing is just doing this piecemeal. Um, a lot of the executive orders that came out the first day called for reviews of this. So they didn't really need this one memo that covers everything. It's already out there coming from the Oval Office for these agencies to be reviewing a lot of this. We saw the refugee resettlement money frozen even before this memo came out of OMB. That's still in place. We've seen the citizenship grant, that money has stopped flowing out to organizations that have signed contracts with the federal government. They've just stopped paying for the work that's already been done, and won't pay for any work going forward. We're also seeing problems with the AmeriCorps programs. They're reviewing, I believe, all AmeriCorps programs to make sure that there's no DEI language So they're not only looking at the administration of these programs through the government, but they're looking at the individual organizations that have AmeriCorps grants. I know we're being looked at, MIRA is, because of the NAIP program we have. I don't know, I can't give you a timeline of how long this review is going to last. But we also know, just on Friday, there was a new executive order that came out. It was a short 2-paragraph order. It's linked in here. You can take a look at it. But it calls for a review of all funding that goes out to NGOs. And so, we're not just talking about immigration-related funding either. We're talking about everything. It can be healthcare, it can be housing, it can be food insecurity, whatever. If it's federal funding that goes to nonprofits, you're gonna, it's all up in the air, basically. We did, hopefully some of you saw the survey that Liz sent out last week. I have it linked here. Really would encourage anyone is losing funding to fill out the survey so we can get a better idea of what the impact really is on the ground among our communities. We, you know, we are hopeful that lawsuits will fix this eventually. Um, I'm seeing that the link doesn't work in Zoom. It'll work in the when I send this out as a PDF. Everyone should be able to use the links on the slides. Thanks for that, Fiona, though. We are hoping the lawsuits will be able to stop this move and get the money flowing again, but there's no telling how long that might take, or how that's going to work. I mean, it could be a very piecemeal reinstatement of funding, or there might be more broader lawsuits that can be brought that would turn all the spigots back on at once. But we're going to have to wait and see how that works out. And thank you, Jessica, for dropping the link in the chat. Couple other things that these are kind of just sort of reviewing things we've talked about more last time. They did reinstitute Remain in Mexico. Haven't really heard any stories about how that's going or what things look like right now on the border. Of course, this also sort of ties into, wait, where'd my asylum page go? There we go. I skipped one. Kind of ties into asylum, which is that they're basically blocking all attempts for people to apply for asylum, especially folks who are trying to just come to the border and claim asylum or anything like that. Where we're at with this is that a number of organizations did file suits on this. We'll have to see where this goes. The suit was filed in Federal District Court for Washington, D.C. I do not have any information about timing on that. I don't know when the first hearing for that is, or if there even has been a hearing already. Lastly, just to review some of the enforcement issues that are going on. Again, the sensitive locations memo has been rescinded. So there's little to stop ICE, excuse me, little to stop ICE from conducting enforcement actions in places like health centers, schools, churches, and the like. A lot of school districts have been coming out with their own policies around how to handle ICE enforcement actions there. I would encourage folks to check with those school districts, check with your school districts to see if they have policies and what those policies are. Similarly, healthcare centers are probably going to have to do this all individually. Everyone's going to have different policies around how this works. Priority memos. Priority memo, of course, has been rescinded. Everyone's a target now. A lot of what we've been seeing with these, they've been very public about their raids. putting news, embedding news organizations like Fox News in some of the ICE enforcement actions, having, the DHS secretary do a ride along with ICE. It's been a lot of very public actions, and they've been, very loud about saying, hey, we're going after criminals. But the truth is, what we've been seeing on the ground really is that they target criminals. They might target one person for a criminal background, wind up taking in 10 people, none of whom have a criminal background. They wind up not even getting the person that they were going after in the first place. So I would just say, all the times that they claim they're going after criminals, I would take that with a grain of salt. Raids, we haven't seen what we would really call well, I don't know if I would say that. Different people have different definitions for raids. So I'm not going to say we haven't seen them. We haven't seen the kind of real large scale raids that we are worried about. We have seen a few cases of them going into a workplace and, for example, asking the owner for, all the I-9s for the employees or something like that. We have heard of cases of owners, refusing to do that. We're just all I can say is people are trying to keep an eye on this and keep an eye, make sure that any raids or any rumors of raids are verified, that any rumors of any enforcement actions are verified. I'll talk about a little more about this in a second, but I strongly encourage people not to spread rumors unless they know what's going on, unless you're able to verify it yourself. And the last thing, they have begun transferring folks to Guantanamo Bay for detention, for immigration detention. I know there's at least one court case that blocked 3 Venezuelans from being transferred there. I'm sure there will be more court cases, hopefully coming up in the near future, to stop this altogether. But we'll have to see how that goes. And then back to the verification, I do just want to say that it's important both to make sure the community knows what's going on, but not to scare them. So I think just before any of us start spreading any rumors about any enforcement actions, if we can do the best that we can to verify that they're actually going on, confirm, for example, simply that it is ICE and not some other law enforcement agency involved. Of course, we have been seeing ICE going around with, particularly DEA, and other federal law enforcement agencies, basically working together. You can document this stuff. In Massachusetts, it's lawful to record police activities. So if you are there in person and see something going on, I encourage you to record just so that everyone can see what's happening. And make sure that that you're noting where and when this is all happening. And again, just make sure that we're only sharing verified information. And I believe that, if this will stop sharing, that is actually it. So I am happy at this point to take any questions anyone might have. Might not have answers, but I'm happy to take any questions.
I have one question, Saran. There is a limit of executive order that a president can sign?
Not according to this president. No, I mean, this has been a real part of the problem is, first off, executive orders do tend to be fairly vague. Sometimes the devil's in the details. But, you know, the truth is most of these orders, you know, that's why we're seeing these court challenges, because a lot of things that they're trying to do are just straight up in violation of the law, or as you can see with the birthright citizenship, in violation of the Constitution. I would also just add, you know, we're seeing states taking a lot of anti-immigrant action as well. Things like, you know, reporting parents of kids in schools. They're trying to do things like that. So it's a dangerous time out there. I would also warn that New Hampshire, I don't know if they passed the law already or not, but I know last week they were debating a bill to not recognize driver's licenses for undocumented people. So someone who has a driver's license under the Mass law, for example, trying to drive in New Hampshire, they would not, the idea is they would not recognize that license. Now, how that would work in practice, I have no idea. I mean, my license isn't Real ID compliant, so I don't know how that would actually work in practice. But you know, we've seen over the years a lot of issues with folks driving in New Hampshire, and I think we're gonna see those concerns again. Lorraine and then Diego.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Sarang, for all the explanation. I guess two questions actually. I guess one of the urgent one is the sensitive locations, right? We have been asked a lot to speak about that. So the recommendation is really to check on the district office of the location. I know, for example, that Acton, some schools in Acton already are emailing parents to say like, hey, it's okay to bring your kids to the school, but at what point it is okay, like, people are scared. And what is the current that we have in writing for the policy on sensitive location? If they gonna come to the location, to the school, for example, the director are the one, the principal are the one who's gonna speak with ICE. What we can say to the community, that's the question.
You know, as far as if ICE tries to conduct some kind of enforcement action at the school, and how the school's going to react, that's where the school district policies come into play. Like, I don't know who's going to be, you know, which individuals at the schools are going to be talking to them. And the other thing is,
on the district.
Sorry?
So it really depends on the district.
It depends on the district, exactly. Okay. Exactly, how they're going to go about those policies. And, you know, the only other thing I can say is that you know, by rescinding the sensitive locations memo, they're basically saying that you're free to conduct enforcement actions anywhere. You know, there's nothing that really restricts ICE anymore, frankly. It's a little, I will just say it's a little bit different. You know, the courthouses were actually covered under a different memo. And in that case, the state court system does have policies around ICE going into those courthouses, but they're not going to stop ICE. You know, their policy is basically just that, well, if ICE is going to come, they've got to let us know and work with us to do any enforcement actions in the courthouse.
Okay.
That answer all the questions?
Yeah.
Okay. As best, again, I don't really have great answers, unfortunately. Diego?
So the more we talk, the more questions that are going to come up probably for each of us. I was going to ask and mention other things, but building on Lorraine's question, if a school has a policy that they're not going to allow ICE agents into they're holding that the school is a private space. And this is, I guess, question for attorneys, to what extent can they go in without a warrant?
I think a lot of this we're going to see litigated. And, you know, the new U.S. attorney for Massachusetts just came out last week and basically said, well, we're going to, prosecute anyone who tries to block ICE enforcement actions. Now, some of that I think is just kind of bullying and, trying to force people into doing what they want to do, just under threat. But truth is, I think we're going to see court cases on this. Like it's just not an issue that's really been dealt with before, unfortunately.
Can I ask a quick comment and a question? I'm sorry, Don. One is just to tell folks that we are seeing a lot of folks who are being turned into the Border Patrol in Maine by the state police there. So in January, we had at least 2 construction crews for whom that happened. So it's not just New Hampshire. And we have there are a lot of Framingham crews up in that area. The question I wanted to ask quickly, if I may, is, and I don't know that anybody knows the answer to these things, but to what extent are we advising people to carry paper copies of documentation of their 2-year presence versus photos on their phones? And how does the documentation of presence or the order of release on recognizance overlap with the red card usage? In other words, at what point are you saying, this is my name and I'm not going to give you any further, and I'm going to maintain silence? And at what point do you start bringing out your documentation?
I don't know if that's quite that easy a question, but I would say that that kind of documentation is more useful if you're going to be arrested already. So maybe you don't give your name, maybe you don't give any information, they decide to arrest you. Or maybe there's some other sort of enforcement action. Let's say it's one of these things where they just go into a neighborhood and pick everyone up. That's where those documents, because really the red card is to hopefully stop you from getting arrested, or at least giving them information that'll help them use against you. When you're talking about carrying those other documents around, it's more about, okay, you're already going to be arrested. You're already going to be put in deportation proceedings. This is to make sure you're not subject to expedited removal.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. Sri?
Hey, Sarang. A quick question on TPS for Venezuelans. It was always my understanding that the way TPS was structured, that it would be really difficult for like the president to rescind TPS, right? That's just what I thought. Obviously he's, chosen to do what he's doing. Is there any legal action on the horizon? And is that true? Like, is TPS structured where, that would make it really difficult for the president to actually do that? I was always under some understanding of that sort. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and Jess, I invite you to chime in here too. I am not entirely clear. I thought it would be more difficult than it was. And we're waiting to see. We've got folks who are asking about lawsuits to try and stop this. I've checked with at least one local organization. Doesn't look like they have the capacity right now. I would expect some lawsuits to try and stop this. I'm actually kind of surprised they haven't already.
Something like that happened in the first time around with Trump, right?
Yeah.
Didn't someone step in and file a suit and they got an injunction or whatever?
Right.
to
They tried to shut down almost every TPS last time around. And part of it was this State Department determination that things were fine in these countries, particularly in Haiti. That was a real problem.
Right.
That alone might be a basis to sue for Venezuela as well. But yeah, I mean, right now, again, it's just kind of a holding pattern to see. Hopefully, I would encourage if folks do have, members of the community who might who might be interested in being plaintiffs in a case like this, keep a list. Hopefully someone will be bringing suit on this. We have been asked to, I'll say that we have been asked to, but we don't have that kind of capacity, unfortunately.
Got it. Thanks, Ryan.
Yep. Are there any other questions?
Just a quick one, if you can comment a little bit of the, I think it was recent in Florida that the state police in Florida did an agreement with ICE. I didn't quite understood how was it, and if you foresee that happening into other states, for example.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. I didn't even read the article. It didn't look like a 287G agreement to me, but I'm not sure. I would have to look at it.
What I saw in the article, it wasn't for 280G agreement. It was related to if a state police, like in a road, in a freeway in Florida, stop a person, they have the right to ask for immigration status and call ICE on it. So it was pretty much how it was an article, but I didn't see any memo in writing pretty much saying
Yeah.
legal or illegal to do it. So I was just, hoping to see more opinions on that.
So I guess the one thing I can say about that is that that's something state police have always that all police, so ICE has, what do they call it? Law Enforcement Support Center, the LASC, LESC, that basically any law enforcement officer can reach out to them and to check the status on someone. So it sounds like this is just sort of formalizing that process as policy for the state police. That's what it sounds like. This is one of their goals. This is one of the things they talked about in the executive order, was to try and get as much local law enforcement cooperation and immigration enforcement as possible. So I think we will see more of these kind of things. Hopefully not in Massachusetts, but we could. Right now there's nothing to block, say, a town police force from signing a 287G or instituting policies like this right now. Any other questions? No. Okay. Well, I do just want to reiterate something I've been saying. I feel like I've been saying this a lot. But it really is going to be the lawsuits that are going to stop all this. They don't care about, what the people think. So if you have folks who could make good plaintiffs, or if you need to be connected, as much as we find out what lawsuits are out there, we will make sure that you all know. All right. If there's nothing else, have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.